Hi, this is Sarah Wolf, Art Specialist at Battery Park City Authority. This is the Teen Art Experience. Today we are going to be talking about looking closely, zooming in to see detail, and we're going to use some subjects from the park. So this is our sketchbook that we made earlier, and I'm just going to show you a way to do some simple drawings that get your eye used to looking closely. So we looked at how we can look with our viewfinder at things that we see perhaps in the park. A contour line drawing is a drawing that goes around the outside of something, but it really goes within the object as well, capturing the elements of the image to try to really capture the form or the dimensionality of an image. I'm looking at some flowers in the park. A challenge that you can do with contour line drawing, which really helps focus your eye, is to not look at your paper. So that's called a blind contour drawing. So one way to do that is to put a piece of paper like here above your drawing paper, but below your chin so you can't see it. You could also put another piece of paper over your hand so you can't see what you're drawing. But the key is not to look at your paper. And this is a really great daily exercise to really train your eye to look closely and for your eye to kind of align with your hand so that everything your eye sees, your hand is matching. I'm looking at some flowers in the park. So I'm just gonna find one spot where I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna lift my pencil, so it's all gonna stay right here. And if I lose my spot or go off the paper, I'm just gonna come right back on. So we're gonna start here. It's a very slow way to draw. Again, I'm not looking at my paper. We're not looking for precision. And you almost wanna think of it as if your finger could trace an object to try to figure out what that object is. Even though I'm really going slowly and carefully, I'm not spending a huge amount of time on this drawing either, because it's only mine. So it's something that you can easily do in 5 minutes a day, in 2 minutes a day. You could draw your shoe every day. Be great practice drawing a hand. And I'm forgetting what I drew already and what I have not. But plants are a great thing to do because you're not going to get a lot of disagreement. All right, so here's my my blind contour drawing. And I can see that I got off in a lot of places. I kind of started off better here, but it makes a really interesting drawing. When we talk about line quality, we've got all kinds of different lines. My lines didn't vary in terms of their thickness too much because I have the flare pen, but we actually get some really interesting lines and shapes, and it really informs us about what I was looking at, even though everything doesn't line up perfectly. Okay. Now we can go on and do a regular drawing where we look more closely and carefully. Okay, so I'm looking at the details of this flower. We've gone in for a really close-up view. First, to draw it, I'm gonna kind of sketch out the placement of the flower, and I'm gonna always go lightly. This is kind of more of a gestural sketch where I'm trying to get the main motions of the flower in a very loose, sketchy way so that I can go back over it. We have a little bee here. I'm getting all of my proportions correct here in this beginning stage. This is a very loose underdrawing, and I used a 2B pencil. You can decide to do your drawing with more than one pencil, or one is also fine. And now that I've kind of got my composition figured out, I can go in and start defining some of the larger areas. I can press a little more with my pencil, get little darker marks, but I also want to continue to work on the big shapes first before I go into details. So I'm not going to worry too much about this little bee, but this round part of the flower is a real focal point. And then I'm going to redefine some of these petals. And I could decide to leave this as a line drawing. The nice thing about working with pencil is that it's very easy to erase once you've kind of defined where everything goes. And you can decide if your drawing is just going to be line and you're going to really refine it. Right now I'm really looking at the contours of the petals. I'm still not really erasing that much. I'm starting to pay attention to how the petals fold over each other, maybe have some inner lines that define them. And again, I'm working mainly from large areas. Here the petals are so close together. The line is much lighter, so I don't want to really make as dark a line because I don't want to draw too much attention, and I want my line quality to match the lightness or darkness of this space. Drawing on site also helps us notice details that we might not see in a photograph. We draw to remember, but we also draw because it helps us notice more things. We see things we wouldn't have noticed if we didn't draw an object. It forces us to look more closely. And then the drawing is a record of what we saw. I've redrawn this petal over here a little bit. It's really kind of another cluster of petals. There's a dark line here, so I'm going to darken that area. So what's happening in this image is an interesting way that you can create a sense of perspective. There's a plant here in the background that kind of has these spiky points, but they're not really that noticeable. And they're kind of, I want to kind of focus on this plant in the front. So I don't want to take too much attention away from them, so I'm going to draw them more lightly. Another thing I could do is draw them in a more fuzzy kind of way. I don't want to draw too much attention to these stems in the background. Okay, so we have kind of a nice line drawing. I want to make some revisions here. And partially I switched to this ebony pencil because I want to give more a sense of light and dark. On this side, it's so dark that the little areas that come out are almost light sections against this dark section around the bee. And here on the top, they almost become very small dark shadows between the orange shapes. So I want to give a sense of this texture. And lighter here on the top. My bee kind of comes around like this. I'm constantly changing and refining, defining as I'm drawing. And you can decide how much or how little you want to render something. You could have left this as just a line drawing. This is actually probably has more lines than I would like. So I might lighten some of them. And because this bee is transparent, On the wing area I can see through. It's okay to leave searching marks that kind of show you finding the space. Look in this whole area here. And adding value helps things look like they have more dimension. I'm gonna go in and really darken some of the spaces between these petals because that is what is most striking to me. Remember when we were experimenting with our materials, we could get into shading, which I'm doing here, cross hatching, hatching. Here I've done a lot of stippling. There's actually a lot of contrast in this part of the flower. But I think making the dark spaces between will really be what makes this stand out. We want to have a variety of lines and line quality. So changing the direction of my pencils creates some of that variety. A little cross hatching here gives a sense of that variety. Here we did a lot of stippling in the middle. And here again, those lines become very light. And I might decide some areas can be looser and then some areas can become more defined. Actually get this little glimpse of this flower coming through. And again, I don't want to get too detailed on that little spiky flower because that will take away from my greater image. There's also something happening really that's interesting at the tips of these flowers where there's just a little dip in the final petals. It's just really a nice little moment, kind of. Flowers are pretty forgiving for the most part. No one's going to look at this and say that's not a flower, or that flower wasn't exactly like that. Your work should always kind of reflect your personal style and who you are. So our objective is not to make a copy like a photograph would, because otherwise we could just take a photograph. So that gives you a general idea. I want to get a little darker over here. I could leave it kind of like this, but this side still looks a little bit unfinished to me. Depends how much you want a drawing to be a fully rendered, completed work of art, and how much you feel it's like a sketch. At this time, especially when we're closed up inside and we can't get outside, it's nice to have something as a daily practice. It can be very meditative. It can also give you an opportunity to really examine your skills. It can give you an opportunity to grow in your ability. And the act of looking closely is a really, really important skill to have, no matter if you're an artist or not. You might have to leave something half finished, especially if you're working from life. And you might darken or lighten things in a different way than what you observe after you're done to try to finish the piece. I'm going over all of this because I want to push it back in the composition a little bit. Even though I like those dark lines, I want the focus to be more on the flowers in the front. So now I'm going to go in with my eraser and clean up a few areas. Pull some things back. I'm going to use the kneaded eraser. I can lighten areas, blend areas, pull out some lights, and clean up areas where my lines probably went over a little more than I wanted. Some areas I'm almost drawing with the eraser, especially if I've spent so much time on the background. I want to kind of bring those petals back to the front. I can also blend them with my finger. And then I might go in and darken up just a little bit more to find some of these shapes. Some darker lines. I'm going to add back some of those straighter lines that define these forms. And I want to bring that little lip back in that I liked so much. The whole time I'm really looking more closely at my subject than I am at my paper. And there we go. That's our final drawing.
This is South Cove. So this is what we would see if we were walking along the river coming toward South Cove and the structure on the south end, which kind of goes out into the river in the cove. And this is a great public artwork, which is a collaboration between the environmental artist Mary Miss, an architect named Stanton Extut, and landscape architect Susan Child. So it's a really amazing combination of landscape architecture, and visual art. New Jersey across the river, and this nice curve of that platform going out. And then this is what's called a bird's eye view. So this is from above, looking down at the structure. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on today in our drawing. So that's a little crash course in point of view, and now we're going to start to draw.
When I look at this image, I really see not only the bird's eye view, but how there's different forms of perspective. There's things that are more detailed in the front, like the bushes in the front. And then I see, as I get into the distance, the lines of the walkway going into the South Cove kind of angle closer together, or appear to be getting closer together. Also, things in the distance become a little bit less detailed, like the water has less detail than the trees in the front. And I also see that the buildings in the background have even less detail. Things also get a little hazy as they get further away from us and turn a little bit more to kind of a blue-gray. So I'm seeing more contrast in the front of the image. I'm seeing less contrast in the skyline in the background. I'm also seeing more blues and gray tones and brighter colors in the objects that are closer to me, like the green of the bushes and the red of the woman's backpack. And I'm just going to do a light sketch with a light pencil. I'm going to use a B pencil and an eraser. And I have kind of a long horizontal, so I'm going to probably crop my image a little bit. But I really like that arc coming through. So I want to get everything kind of in position, and then I can add ink later. So that arc comes through like this. Actually goes off the page, and because this is so long, I'm realizing I'm not going to have that much room to fit that much in. So already my perspective is shifting. That angle comes a little bit this way, And curves in like this. Because I want to be more exact, I'm trying to measure everything a little bit more closely. And because it's zoomed in so closely, it's becoming almost an abstract view. And I'm adjusting it as I draw. So I'll get a little piece of that walkway coming closer to me. The reason I use pencil is so I can erase. I don't want to go straight to pen if it's something that I really want to be accurate. You can see that I'm getting darker as I'm going. And I'm trying to draw the main directional lines first, and then work on secondary spaces and kind of map out my proportions in the beginning. Here we have the bushes coming in, and I just see the little glimmer of the kind of island in the middle coming down. So I'm making corrections as I go. So this is a natural landscape kind of view, but it includes a lot of urban construction. A long horizontal format like this is called a landscape as well. So if you're drawing in a park or anywhere in the city or an area with buildings, there's going to be an element of nature and an element of an urban construction. Here is a great shadow coming down and mimicking those lines. And this is so dark I can't quite see what's happening over there. And then we've got these great lines coming out, creating this structure. As we're shifting the view, these shifts a bit. So I'm not so concerned about precision. Trying to really ground these. And this outer edge of these, all of these objects really has a precedence. So we kind of see that coming through. I'm going to make sure I get these angles correct, so I'm really going to check those. So if you do have architectural elements, you want to get the proportions correct, because that's a little less forgiving. And then I have some benches. So what I thought was initially going to be more of a landscape, ended up being kind of a close-up view of the bridge and part of South Cove. I do think what I'll do is add a little of the detail here in the front that pushes this into the front of the frame. And I might do some of the lines in the walkway, which are going to decrease in contrast and detail as I get closer, and that kind of carries me into the drawing. I might clean this up for my final piece, and I might add a little value back here to make it that more apparent. Got some nice little lines back here that make it that fence, and there's a lot of contrast. Changing my line quality and pressing harder here, and a little bit more detail. Trying to put a little bit of more of the darks and lights into this. I think it's quite a bit darker over here. Right, then we have a lighter area in the back. I'll just put that in a little bit to finish this up. And as we get further away, it looks a little bit darker as we go up toward the horizon. At some point we don't need to look at the drawing anymore, or at the source anymore. We just want our drawing to be successful. So in addition to comparing form, I'm comparing light and dark. And we'll go right back in. So we're doing a lot of changing and refining and changing and refining. Here's our final drawing. So our sketchbook is really becoming kind of a portrait of the park in really different ways. It's nice to have a theme for a whole sketchbook or something that you explore in the whole thing. And it's always nice to carry a sketchbook with you just to keep practicing. Please share what you make with us, and we hope you enjoy this video. Thank you.